8:16 here on the Morning Drive as we drive on over to Rowdy.com and talk a little NASCAR with Leonard Bassmasters. Find out everything that's going on and chatting a little bit about NASCAR and the world of NASCAR at Rowdy.com. Leonard, good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Brady. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing a lot better than General Motors, the second of NASCAR's four manufacturers to enter Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Any concern among the top Chevy drivers?
I'm sure there's concern. There has to be. Anytime there's uncertainty, as we know in this economy, a lot of people are facing that, and NASCAR is no exception. Not exactly sure what's going to happen. I will say that so far things seem to be pretty good for the Chevy teams. They're not reporting any specific problems, not that they necessarily would, but I'm sure there's just a lot of uncertainty around, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, obviously Chevy got a win last week. Jimmy Johnson back in the winner's circle. He's a guy that obviously looked like he was dominating the circuit the last couple of years. How has he been up to this point this season?
He's been better up to this point this season than he was last season when I think they were still trying to figure out how to run this car on intermediate tracks. Jimmy's got his second win now, and he was a dominant car at Dover. He swept that place one year, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him come back and win this race in the chase as good as he looked. Led pretty much three-quarters of the race, and it was kind of interesting because he got put sort of back in eighth with 25 laps to go because he out for four tires. A lot of guys went for two and got track position on him. So we had kind of a nice finish there with Jimmy battling with Tony Stewart, and Jimmy eventually got by him. So I think Jimmy's looking good, and Tony Stewart's remarkable. He came in second in that race, and now he leads the points.
I was going to
ask you. A lot of us thought that he would struggle to maybe make the chase. He would have to fight hard to make the chase, and now he's leading the points. So there you go.
I was going to ask you about Tony Stewart next, and his season to this point. Pretty remarkable when you think about it. A lot of people question whether or not it was the right decision to leave obviously the Joe Gibbs team where he was so dominant, but boy, he looks like he's made the right move, hasn't he?
He really has, and it is incredible to me, and I know he does have Hendrick equipment, but that team last year had as well, and he's just put things together. And don't just look at what Tony's done, look at what Ryan Newman's been able to do. He's solidly in the chase now, too. And this might be Tony Stewart's best start to a season ever. I mean, usually this is right around now, as the weather starts to get hot, is when he starts karting these kind of finishes, but he's been knocking off top five like nobody's business this year, and there he is leading the points, and usually, as I say, he starts doing that a little bit later in the year, so you got to be very, very impressed with Tony Stewart.
Both guys, Stewart and Newman, have had some success at Pocono. This ought to be a pretty interesting race this weekend, shouldn't it?
It really is. It's a long race. The racetrack is shaped like a big triangle. It's 2.5 miles long, but the corners are very flat, so kind of a combination of a super speedway and a road course. Some people call it a roval. And it's tough because each of the corners is a different length. Each of the corners has different banking, and you get down there into turn 3, and that is just a long, sweeping corner. I think it's only got 6 degrees there, so it's extremely flat. And you'll find a challenge getting through there and getting onto what is basically the longest patch of straight asphalt that we run on the NASCAR circuit. So getting through 3, I think, is the big key. If you can get back on the gas early, maybe get in a little more gently than some other guys, get back on the gas early and get some good speed going down the front straight, I think you'll be in pretty good shape.
Leonard Bassmasters with us, Rowdy.com, one of the big stories that we talked about a week ago, and it didn't take long for it to happen after we got off the air, but Tony Eury out for Dale Earnhardt Jr. I know you're not surprised based on what you said a week ago with us, but how did Junior fare without him?
He did rather well, actually. He ran in the top 10 for much of the race. They ended up getting a little bit off at the end there, and he ended up 12th, which for him lately is a very good finish. And the thing is, he looked good. He looked like he was they were keeping up with the racetrack. He wasn't getting frustrated on the radio. I talked to a bunch of guys who scanned Junior during the race, and they said he was giving much more detailed feedback about the race car as opposed to just expressing frustration, and that helped Lance McGrew, his crew chief, dial the car in a little bit for him. And, the thing is, with Dale Jr., what Rick Hendrick said is maybe by changing a crew chief, we're kind of forced Junior to communicate in a different way and look at things in a different way, and that's exactly what happened in the first race. So I think, obviously we'll have to see what happens in a couple months, but the signs certainly were good after one race.
Is he overrated?
I don't know that he is. I mean, it's one of those really tricky things. I think Dale Jr. is pretty talented. He's won, I think, 18 times in Cup. You don't win that much if you're not pretty damn good. I think there is a big part of the driver's job, however, that is trying to communicate with the crew chief, break down the corner, get the car exactly right. You know, the driver is basically the data acquisition system in NASCAR. Okay, so the driver has to be very good at that aspect of his job. It's not just how can I drive this thing, but how good am I at communicating what the car is doing and what we need to do to fix it. And so maybe with this new car, I think that taxes that part of a driver's job a little more, and maybe that's something that Dale Jr. hasn't been required to do quite as much in the past and that he has to learn how to do now. But I think as far as driving talent, I think he's pretty damn talented.
Do you still see Kyle Busch as a factor this weekend?
I would see Kyle as a factor anywhere. You know, his results lately have not been super stellar. Ironically, you know, he made these comments about Junior at Dover and then went out and had 3 bad luck races in a row. He should have won the nationwide race, had a tire problem, should have won the truck race, had a tire problem, and was running top 10 in the Cup race and had a vibration. So maybe he needs to focus on his own deal and stop throwing barbs at Junior. I think Kyle can be a factor anywhere. He's definitely a top-tier talent. You know, it's consistency that often eludes him, and if he's going to contend for a title like we all think he really should and probably will, he's going to have to find that by the time we get to the chase.
Well, those two guys are kind of linked together because of the change, so it's certainly a natural fit to see he had more success than Junior did after the switch last year, and obviously he probably, don't you think, still feels like maybe he should be part of that super team instead of Junior?
Absolutely. I mean, if you know, I think anybody would feel that way, you know. They let me go, and they brought this other guy in. Well, I want to show them they made a mistake, and I don't think there's much doubt that Kyle feels that way, and I can't blame him for feeling that way. He certainly goes out of his way to make those feelings clear. So I certainly don't blame him for feeling that way, and there's no doubt he's got to be in his bonnet about Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Is final thought on the Jeremy Mayfield situation. Would it just be best if he just accepted his suspension and come back? Why is he challenging this, and it's getting all to Supreme Courts and stuff? I mean, this is getting a little bit out of control, isn't it?
It is, and, you know, I guess we'll have to wait and see if his strategy plays out. It's a very, very odd situation to me. They're kind of, the way I read it, and I'm not a legal expert, but they're really challenging the process as much as the result. This wasn't a fair process. NASCAR didn't handle it properly, et cetera, et cetera. You know, my advice would have been what you said. You know, I think you get forgiveness and you can get reinstated, but he didn't want to do that, and of course, maybe he feels he's innocent. In the end, we don't really know what the truth is. All we have to go on is what NASCAR says and what he says, and perhaps in some of these court proceedings, we'll see the toxicology report. NASCAR says, yeah, we found the 2 substances that you indicated, Jeremy, but we also found one more, an illegal banned substance, and they haven't really addressed that directly yet. So we'll just have to see how it all plays out, but it's going to be a while, I think. The strategy they've taken, it's going to be a while.
Leonard Bassmasters, check out the website, rowdy.com, R-O-W-D-Y, rowdy.com. Leonard, appreciate your time, my friend.
Anytime, Brady. Happy to do it.
Thank you, sir. Leonard Bassmasters talking NASCAR with us every week. Rowdy.com is the website.